I've saved my progress as 3stars.ai found inside the O5 Shapes folder. And in this exercise, we're going to scale and rotate this star down here at the bottom of the graphic to align to the red star in a template. But the first thing I want to do is add a center point to this object so that I can align the very center of the star to this guide intersection. And I think it's pretty close right now, but it's not exactly on. And you can add center points to shapes by going up to the window menu and choosing the attributes command, which will bring up the attributes panel as you see it here. Then go ahead and click the up-down arrow icon in order to expand this panel because by default it's pretty darn dinky. And what we have here is a real grab bag of functions. A couple of overprinting checkboxes, these image map functions that have nothing to do with overprinting, and the center options note right here. I'll go ahead and click on Show Center, which happens to be, in my case, the exact center of the shape, which is awesome, but that's not the way it's necessarily going to happen. What we're really adding is a point that identifies the center of the bounding box. So if you have a non-symmetrical shape, for example, a shape that's rotated at an odd angle, or a star with an odd number of sides, then your center point is not going to be representative of the shape itself, just the bounding box. Let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to go ahead and scroll upward a little, and I'll press the A key to switch to my wide arrow tool, and then I'm going to go ahead and select a couple of points here. I'm going to marquee around this guy, and the fact that I marqueed ensures that only that one anchor point is selected. Then I'll shift-click on this anchor point, and I'll press the backspace key or the delete key on the Mac in order to delete those 2 points. And notice that the center point leapt to a new location. In fact, now we have 2 center points because we have 2 independent paths that are no longer connected to each other. And neither of the center point is particularly representative of the center of that specific shape. Notice that this center point is way too high. It's the center of the bounding box for sure, but it's not the center of the point structure of the shape, which is generally what you want. And if you really want to get a sense of this, try adding a center point to a 5-pointed star, and you'll see that it's just off slightly enough to goof up everything. Anyway, I'll go ahead and undo that modification, Control-Z, Command-Z on the Mac. And then I'll click on that center point. Notice when I do, I select the entire shape even though I clicked on it with a wide arrow tool. And so I'm going to drag that center point so it snaps into alignment with this guide intersection right there. And then I'm going to press Shift up arrow to move it up 2 points. And that assumes, of course, that your keyboard increment is set to 0.2 point, as I suggested in the previous chapter. Anyway, I'm going to cancel out of preferences. Now what we need to do is rotate this star so it matches the angle of the star in the background. And notice that instead of having a point through the vertical guideline, I have 2 points that are straddling the vertical guideline here inside of this red star. We still have an 8-pointed star, it's just angled differently. So I need to figure out how to make this work. The periodicity of this star, by which I mean the increment from one point to the next, is 45 degrees. Right? Because when you divide 360 degrees by 8, you get 45 degrees. Well, maybe you don't do math like that in your head, but here's the deal. You can see it happening. We've got a point there, and we've got another point at 90 degrees up there, a point over to the left at 180 degrees, a point down south as well. So by virtue of the fact that we have diagonal points, they're located at 45 degrees. So in order to make this star look like the one in the background, we need to rotate the points half of their distance apart from each other. So 45 divided by 2. Well, you might be able to do that in your head, or you might prefer just to tell Illustrator to do it. So I'll go over to the Rotate tool right here, click on it. Note that my origin point is right there in the center of the shape, so right on top of the center point I just created. If you're happy with that origin point and you don't need to change it, then you can just double-click on the Rotate tool to bring up the Rotate dialog box. And you can see I already have the right value in here because I've been playing around. But let's say it came up as 12 degrees because that was the last rotation you applied. You would select this value, enter 45 divided by 2 because you can perform simple arithmetic with any of these numerical values, and then you press the Tab key to see it work. And sure enough, that goes ahead and divides 45 by 2, gives you 22.5 degrees. Click OK in order to apply that change. Now then, let's switch to the Scale tool. I want to move my cursor 45 degrees away from my origin, so down left seems pretty good to me. And I'll drag inward as I press the Shift key to reduce the size of the star. And once I'm matching the template, once again, I'll go ahead and release my mouse button, and then I'll release the shift key in order to perform that scaling. Now let's go ahead and change the stroke weight once again from 10 point, because we were working from that large star, to 4 point. And I'll change the fill color from white to red, and then press the enter key or the return key on the Mac to apply that modification. And then just to make sure we've done what we think we've done at this point in the game, I'll go ahead and zoom out even farther. I will control click or command click on the eyeball in front of the star sublayer, and sure enough, everything looks hunky-dory. I'll press Control Shift A, Command Shift A on the Mac in order to deselect my illustration. In the next exercise, we'll draw these little chiclets on either side of the graphic using the rounded rectangle tool.